This spring training, all eyes are on top prospect Wyatt Langford, including one of the Rangers coaches who said he's the best player on the field. The answer is the who said it. May surprise you. Talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 10 seasons, including all 5 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow this show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before I get into this massive feature by Jeff Passan on the Rangers' top prospect Wyatt Langford, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, I know many of you, like me, in this Rangers spring training, the only real position battle in the positional group is who's going to get the opening day DH spot. And the top questions, the top prospects in that order are between Wyatt Langford, Justin Foscue, and Ezekiel Duran. And I don't know about y'all, but I felt very, very confident that Langford was going to win this job out of camp. Not only because he is the Rangers' top prospect, because of the things that he does on the baseball field, the type of player that he is, and how highly the Rangers think of him. Now, I remember last year when Adolis Garcia got hurt the first time with that knee injury, I, like probably several of you, and even talking with some of my friends who cover prospects and have covered prospects for a long time, we thought, it might be insane, but maybe Wyatt Langford is the player the Rangers should call up to replace Adolis Garcia in this lineup, to give the Rangers an extra kick, just to have him in that lineup because his bat is so good, because the things he's doing in the minors are so good, the way he is putting together at bats, the swing decisions he's making, the batted ball data, the everything about what he was doing, not just the raw numbers being so impressive, but the player being so impressive at such a young age, at such a stage in his development, that there was a real question about, among prospect heads at least, that thought, okay, maybe Wyatt Langford, even though he's got 200 minor league plate appearances, or I think even fewer at the time, maybe this is the time for him to come up and make his big league debut and make an impact. But the Rangers decided to go with Evan Carter, a little bit more polished, a little bit closer to the big leagues at that point. I don't think Wyatt Langford had made his jump to AAA at that point yet. Was about a week or not very long away from making his AAA debut. But the Rangers went with Evan Carter, filling him beautifully, and was amazing down the stretch, and was an integral part of the Rangers winning World Series. And Wyatt Langford was hanging around. There was a lot of talk amongst Rangers beat writers that, even considering calling up Langford was foolish. There's no way the Rangers would do it. There's no way. He's not even, taking live at bats right now. He's definitely in Florida. And I protested at the time. I said, there's no way that this guy with this much potential, with this highly touted, that has been this good and is this close to the big leagues, has just been sent home for the year when the Rangers are on this run through the postseason. I thought there's no way they aren't having this kid at least in their traveling crew, at least around the team. He may be, hidden off to the side so that, media can't see that he is there, but I thought there's no way they aren't keeping this kid around to, learn from the big league vets, see what this experience is like through a postseason run, and to learn from it. Because that's an invaluable experience to have for one of your top prospects. And I kept on being laughed off and scoffed at. And when Chris Young was asked about it in a press conference of if they considered Wyatt Langford in the World Series, calling him up after the last Adolis Garcia injury, the oblique injury that ended up sidelining him before Game 4 and Game 5 of the World Series, which the Rangers won. And he was asked if Wyatt Langford was considered as a replacement. And he just kind of laughed and said, oh no, we're not we're not considering that. But then here we are, February 27th, and Jeff Passan releases this wonderful article. And there were so many quotes from it that are so revealing. The main of which is one Rangers coach calling it Wyatt Langford the best player on the field. And that was Mike Maddux, the pitching coach. And he's seen some players. He knows what the best player on the field looks like. And saying that Wyatt Langford was the best player on the field with the players that were on the field at the time is an insanely high compliment. Corey Seager might not have been, he was not playing at the time. Josh Jung had played a little bit. Adolis Garcia was there. Marcus Semien, the guy who finished third in MVP voting, was there. But no. Maddux said, this kid Wyatt Langford, this is the best player on the field. That is an enormous compliment to Wyatt Langford, the player he is. And with someone of that caliber of experience, having that high a praise for a kid this young, I mean, this is why all of us prospect heads, myself including, and a lot of Rangers fans who follow prospects, are going nuts over this kid. Saying the sky is below the limit. The sky is the floor. The ceiling for this kid is, in another universe, another stratosphere, another alternate reality. Like, that's how high the ceiling is on this Wyatt Langford kid. And I understand Rangers fans and more casual fans that don't follow prospects as closely have seen the last many, many years of Rangers prospects come and go and have expectations very unfulfilled. They've seen the likes of Jurickson Profar, who was touted as the number one prospect in all of baseball, and we all saw how that worked out. We saw Nomar Mazara. We saw Joey Gallo. We saw Jorge Alfaro, Luis Brinson, these guys who were thought of as the next wave of these guys are going to be so incredibly good. And we saw them not work out. We saw the same thing with Rougned Odor, and we thought we might be saying the same thing with Josh Jung and Evan Carter, but no. It seems like the tables have turned a little bit, and the Raiders are actually developing young talent. They are developing young hitters. They are developing these young prospects that are not only living up to the hype, but exceeding the hype. And the expectations were pretty high for Josh Jung, and all he did in his first year was, start the All-Star game for the American League, win, the Rangers a World Series as an integral part of that lineup, and make incredible progress on his defense. Oh, and that Evan Carter kid, all he did was come up in the middle of a pennant race, hit third in the World Series, and help the Rangers win their first ever championship. Oh, and he just turned 21, 2 weeks before he got called up to the big leagues. Things are changing around this Rangers team, and Wyatt Langford is going to be a big part of why things are changing. And like I said, that the Rangers were definitely considering having this kid around, all these quotes in this Jeff Passan article, they are very adamant about how, actually, by the way, Wyatt Langford was definitely in that traveling party. He was taking at-bats off of Max Scherzer to get him ready when he was coming back from his injury, and he took Max Scherzer deep. And he was, apparently, the word was flabbergasting onlookers. They were flabbergasted. These are people who do not flabbergast easily. But Wyatt Langford had their jaws on the floor with the things he was doing at his age, a guy who had just turned 22, a little older than the young little savior in Evan Carter. But he was putting on massive displays in batting practice against future Hall of Famers, against other big league caliber players, and just stunning the onlookers. And I like having this vindication that, my wild projection of saying there's no way they aren't at least considering Langford coming up to the big leagues, making his debut. Granted, it would be kind of insane and unprecedented to have a kid come up, make his major league debut. It would have been in Game 4 of the World Series. That would have been a little nuts. But the kid is fearless. He just destroyed college baseball and did it on the big stage of college baseball, was a win away from a college World Series championship. And he just did it in the minors for, a month, 2 months, however long it was, 200 plate appearances in the minors. And he destroyed every level of the minor leagues. This kid is an unprecedented specimen of physicality, of hitting acumen, of hype around a prospect that does not affect him at all. I mean, everybody in Rangers camp is there. For the most part, a lot of them are there to see him, to see what can this kid do, how good is this kid really. And even though the results on the field in spring training games, which, again, don't amount to all that much, haven't been insanely impressive, it's still a monument, a testament to how good this kid is, that he keeps turning heads and keeps getting compliments like being the best player on the field by a guy who has been around the big leagues for many, many decades in Mike Maddux. Coming up, we're going to talk about why it makes the most sense for him to make the opening day roster over some of the Rangers' other options, a little bit of an update on Evan Carter's injury, and the importance and consistency of Marcus Semien. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, I'll be back and talking about how Corey Seager's runner-up to the MVP finish and World Series MVP season are just the start of what the Rangers superstar is going to do in Texas. Now, we're just talking about how important Wyatt Langford is and why he is so incredibly good. And the quotes were just beaming praise about this kid. And one of the ones that really stuck out to me was from Texas bench coach Donnie Ecker / offensive coordinator. This is in Jeff Passan's article on ESPN.com. He said, quote, "He was right there in the conversation. And if he did play, he was going right in the 3-hole," which, oh my gosh, just gave me chills reading this article about just beaming praise about the Rangers' top prospect. I mean, a team coming off a World Series championship, everything is going their way. The offseason wasn't quite as splashy as you'd want, but I mean, you got Evan Carter for a full season this year, and you got Wyatt Langford, who has not made his major league debut yet, coming into an offense that was, I'd say, pretty unquestionably the best in the American League last year. And it's just getting better. And they add this kid, and talk about him hitting in the 3-hole in the World Series. I mean, that would have been nice, but it's also, again, nice for that validation of my claims saying they're definitely at least considering Wyatt Langford. They'd have to be foolish not to. Being laughed off during the World Series run, being brought to fruition pretty clearly that, yeah, that actually was what we were considering, but we just didn't want to tip our hand, which is kind of how I felt like that was happening at the time. But the other reason that I think that Wyatt Langford, the main reason, besides him just being absolutely amazing, astounding, maybe the best player in the Rangers camp right now, according to Mike Maddux, the reason that I think he's going to make the opening day roster is not because he's hitting 0 in Major League Spring Training games as of this recording. He is in the lineup for today's game Tuesday, as you are listening to this, and he might have already gotten his first spring training hit. But because the Rangers will be incentivized to keep players who might win Rookie of the Year on their roster on opening day. Because of last year, mainly, for the most part, I will say my stance on individual awards is that they are not that important. They are a little overrated. They don't matter as much as team success. I mean, would you have rather have Corey Seager won the American League regular season MVP or the World Series MVP? I guarantee you, Corey Seager, everybody on that team, and pretty much every Rangers fan out there would say, yeah, I'd rather him win the World Series MVP because that means we won the World Series as a team, as opposed to watching one good regular season from Corey Seager. But my one exception, which started last year, and because of a new CBA rule, is the reason it's my exception, is the Rookie of the Year. That is the one award that I care very strongly about. and why I am still so upset that Josh Young did not finish third in Rookie of the Year voting, because it actually matters. It actually matters on the field, not just for the long term for a player's, Cooperstown induction. Having more awards makes that case easier, but because as of last year with the new CBA, teams are incentivized to have their top prospects on their opening day roster from day one, from opening day, and throughout the regular season. Because if they have those top prospects on their roster from opening day all the way through the season, and they win Rookie of the Year, or they finish top 3 in Rookie of the Year, there are incentives for that team. There are, prizes, basically, for that team. There are draft picks, draft compensation, things that help you make your team better for the long haul. And when your team is winning a whole lot, like the Rangers did last year, and like they hope to do for years and years to come, getting high draft picks is a difficult thing to do. And if you're good at developing young talent, if you have these rookies that are very, very good, and there is a spot for them on your roster to play consistently, or at least to be on your opening day roster, then you are very highly incentivized to get that person on your roster from day one. That's what happened with Gunnar Henderson last year when he won AL Rookie of the Year. That's what happened with Corbin Carroll last year when he won NL Rookie of the Year. And both of those teams got very high picks in the 30s of the draft range of the first round of the draft, because they had the Rookie of the Year, because of the qualifications. Now, it's not just anybody wins Rookie of the Year, you get a first round pick. That's not how it works. They have to be on the opening day roster, on the roster for a certain number of days. They also have to be a top 100 prospect on 2 of 3 lists. Those 3 lists are from MLB.com, from Baseball America, and from ESPN. And as you all know, both Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford are among the top 100 prospects on all of those lists, and I believe they are all top 10 prospects on all of those lists. Now, the top 10 overall doesn't matter. It just matters if they're all in the top 100, which those guys are. And so, if the Rangers decide that Wyatt Langford doesn't need to be on the opening day roster if he isn't ready, even though they were considering adding him in the World Series last year, and now they have a DH spot open that they did not last year in the World Series. They had Mitch Garver. Thank you very much, Mitch Garver, for the championship. But also, thank you for opening that spot up for Wyatt Langford. So, as much as I like Justin Foscue, and I think he's very good, I think Foscue is going to be a very good major leaguer. But let's look at the best stint of his minor league career, of Justin Foscue's minor league career. It's pretty unquestionably the 33 games that he played in Hickory, his first year of professional baseball, 150 plate appearances there. He went nuclear, absolutely nuclear with the power numbers. 14 home runs, a slash line of 296, 407, 736. That is an 1143 OPS in 150 plate appearances. It's probably a little advanced for that level, but still, that is a very, very good season. Now let's look at Wyatt Langford's overall numbers from the minors last year. That was 1143 OPS in 150 plate appearances for Foscue, his best singular stint at one place. Now let's look at the minors. 200 plate appearances for Wyatt Langford, an 1157 OPS for the full year in the minors. By full year, I mean 44 games. That is higher than Justin Foscue's best month and a half long stretch. I don't say that to diminish Justin Foscue by any means. He is a very valuable player. He walks at an elite rate. He's got some pop. He is very streaky with that power, but when the home runs come, they come in bunches. But Langford's overall numbers that season, it's not just the counting stats. That's one of the things that Chris Young talked about in this article, and one of the things that he praised Langford for is it's not just what the stat sheet says. I mean, the stat sheet's incredibly impressive, hitting 360 with an on-base of 480 and slugging 677 in 44 games. That's very, very impressive. But the underlying data, how hard he's hitting the ball, the decisions he's making on the pitches that he swings at and the ones that he takes, those are all even better. Do you understand why I'm so insanely high on this kid? Why I think he has the highest ceiling of any prospect in the Rangers system, even if he just ends up as a left fielder? The offensive ceiling for this kid is absolutely astronomically high. Higher than the Rangers may have ever had in a prospect. Granted, I feel pretty confident saying that. Maybe Pudge Rodriguez's ceiling was a little bit higher. Maybe there's a few other guys from the 90s that had a little bit higher offensive ceiling. But, I mean, given where the offensive game is now, the OPS plus numbers that I think he's going to put up compared to how the league is offensively now than it was back in the steroid era when the Rangers had so many young hitters that were so very, very good in the late 80s or late 90s and early 2000s, I think that he's going to be right up there for the best hitting prospect the Rangers have ever had. Overall numbers, I'm not saying he's going to put up Pudge Rodriguez numbers. That is something that I don't know that anybody's going to do, because being a 19-year-old catcher who's, the best defensive catcher in the game and also maybe the best offensive catcher in the game for about a decade and wins an MVP, that's a hard thing to replicate. But I think Wyatt Langford is going to be an absolute stud. These compliments coming from all kinds of different places, including Bruce Bochy's incredibly high praise, and just an entire feature being written by the premier baseball writer in the country, all about you before you've even made your major league debut. And it's not phasing Wyatt Langford at all. He's just going out there, hitting tanks, playing some defense in the outfield, and trying to learn every single day from all those big league studs around him. He is going to join them, I am certain, on the opening day roster, and I cannot wait to see what this kid is going to do this year, because, man, the sky is the floor for this kid, and I cannot wait to see him break into the stratosphere. Coming up, we're going to talk about a positive development from Evan Carter on his day off after suffering a hit by pitch, and why Marcus Semien is so incredibly important to this team. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. They've got all kinds of Major League Baseball odds. I've been talking all about how great Wyatt Langford is and how the Rangers are incentivized to keep him on the opening day roster so he can potentially win AL Rookie of the Year. Right now, according to FanDuel, he is plus 700, the third best odds for AL Rookie of the Year, behind only Jackson Holliday and Evan Carter, who's at plus 280, the odds-on favorite to win American League Rookie of the Year. If you wanted to think that the Rangers player is going to win American League MVP as well, Corey Seager's at plus 850, the third favorite in betting odds according to FanDuel. So go check it out. Make your first bet. Go join FanDuel, FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On Thursday's show, I'll be back and talking about why last year was just a start for Josh Young, and I think he is going to get even better after an all-star season in his rookie year. Now, the Rangers got some positive news on Evan Carter after leaving Sunday's game after a hit by pitch from a lefty on the Giants. Kyle Harrison, I believe it was. He hit him with some velocity in the forearm, got taken out of the game, and within 5 minutes, the Rangers thankfully knew that there was no broken bones on that arm, just a bruise. He was considered day-to-day. He played on Monday in a spring training game, in a backfields game, and went up against old buddy John Gray, and ground out to first base the first time, or to the right side of the infield. I believe it was the second baseman, actually, that he grounded out to in his first plate appearance. And then, in his second plate appearance, thought, actually, I'm feeling fine. Worked a 3-1 count, hit an absolute monster shot to center field, a home run off of John Gray, the only runs that John Gray allowed in that spring training outing on the backfields. So, seems like Evan Carter's doing just fine. He's in the lineup for today's game, Tuesday, as you're listening to this. And I think everything was maybe a little overblown with the young little savior of his injury concerns. I mean, last year I talked about it on yesterday's episode that there were concerns about when he got hit by a pitch a couple of times that it sapped his power in last year during the minor leagues, and he had to take a little bit of time off on the injured list to kind of recuperate from that because it was basically a month where he was just not able to get any juice on those pitches. But hey, seems like he has bulked up, added a little bit of weight, and so when he gets plunked in the arm or wherever, because that's part of Major League Baseball, that's what happens, it's not as big a deal. That is a good sign for him and for the Rangers that he is feeling good and back in this lineup on Tuesday. Now, the Rangers played a spring training game against the White Sox yesterday, and there was not a whole lot of memorable developments from this game. We did see a typically kind of erratic game from Cole Winn. I was really looking forward to seeing what he was going to do after a stint in Puerto Rico in the Winter League, where he looked, much better, much more confident. The walk rates weren't insane off the charts like they had been the last couple of years in AAA. This year, this early spring training performance was not the case. An inning in 2/3, a couple of hits, a walk, an earned run, and a hit by pitch and a strikeout. That is kind of the Cole Winn experience. Did get to see a couple innings from Zach Kent where he looked pretty good. Diego Castillo looked very good as well, as did Grant Wolfram. Mark Church was up to 97 with his fastball. That's a very nice development. Also didn't walk anybody in his one inning of work. That's also a nice development. Church has probably got the nastiest slider of any Rangers pitcher in the minor leagues and could be a very helpful addition to the back end of this bullpen, but he's got to work on those walk numbers. He's got to stay in the zone, and having that swing and miss pitch of that slider, and having a fastball that goes up to 97, that's a helpful development for him. Also saw a nice inning from Burlingmare and from Daniel Robert as well. The hitters, this was honestly, it looked like about the weakest lineup that the Rangers could trot out there for any spring training game. But hey, they got the job done. A very important Cactus League win. Rangers are 2-1-1 in Cactus League play. Still have a chance for that championship in Cactus League, which I know they are just dying for. You get one championship and you always want more. So why not start off the year with a spring training championship and finish it off with a World Series championship? Not a whole lot of developments from there, including just one interesting note, just seeing a triple from Sam Huff and a couple of really good at-bats from Justin Foscue. He's been doing very, very well. I know it did sound like I was trying to besmirch Mr. Foscue earlier on this episode. That is not the case. Foscue has been very good in his 8 games, only 8 at-bats so far, but he's got 3 hits, including a well-stung double and a walk as well, a 944 OPS, which means everything in the world in spring training. But no, his at-bats have been pretty good, has struck out half of his at-bats, though, 4 strikeouts in 8 at-bats. Not something that you are typically seeing from Foscue. Had more walks than strikeouts for the year last year in AAA. I'm still very high on this kid. I think he could be a very helpful Major League addition for somebody, but I think a lot of the Rangers lineup is spoken for, and I think he will probably start this year at AAA, despite being a very good, capable of hitting Major League pitching at this point. But I also want to talk about Marcus Semien, his importance to this team. I mean, the value this guy provides every single year, year in, year out, finishing with a 7.4 Baseball Reference 4 season last year, starting all 162 games, plus all 17 in the playoffs, setting a record for the most plate appearances that any player has ever had in the regular season and postseason combined. That is a level of durability that is just, frankly, unmatched, unprecedented, and very difficult to replicate ever. Not to mention that it wasn't just by some young spring chicken who's, able to heal very, very easily, able to, overcome any kind of hit by pitch, any kind of little, ding up, whatever bruises and bumps that Major League players get along the way. This is a guy in his age 32 season. And he put together 162 games after 161 last year and 162 the year before, and then 162 in the last full season of 2019. The guy has just been the Iron Man of all Iron Men, leading off for this team, putting in the work day in, day out. And again, the numbers, they might not jump off the page as the flashiest, most outstanding, amazing player ever, but the consistency of day in, day out, knowing what you're getting from your leadoff guy, knowing what you're getting of a guy who is going to play second base every inning, every day, every game, you are never going to have to think about it. You are never going to have to think about who's going 1-2 in your lineup when you have Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. And he is just maybe the most well-rounded player in Major League Baseball. The catch-all metrics of batting value, base runner value, fielding value, all of those for him last year. Batter value, 95th percentile. He's in the top 5 most valuable offensive players. Base running value, 74th percentile, nearly the top quarter of the league, and that was his lowest of these big 3. And then fielding value, 93rd percentile. So he's in the top 7% of players defensively in baseball, the top 5% of baseball players offensively, and all he does is just put together solid, consistent seasons, putting together a nearly career high on base percentage. Not quite the highest OBP of his career, but the second highest. The only higher OBP he had was back in 2019. The first time he finished top 3 in MVP voting, that was a 369 on base percentage. This year, bumped up that walk rate significantly from last year, had a 348 on base percentage as the Rangers' everyday leadoff player, a 122 OPS plus, which was the third highest of his career. When he bumped that walk rate up significantly, it was one of the things he didn't do very well last year as a leadoff guy. You wanted to see that walk rate be a little bit higher. The Major League average walk rate is 8.4%. Last year he was at 7.3%, or 2022 he was at 7.3%, and then this past year, 9.6%, much higher than the Major League average and much more where you would want your everyday second baseman to be in. He's also not striking out a lot. That's one of the best things that he did offensively. His chase rate was in the top 12% of baseball, so he's not expanding the zone. He's not, chasing off some bad pitches. He's making pitchers beat him in the zone. His swing and miss rate, top 10% of baseball. His actual strikeout rate, top 9% of baseball. And the walk rate jumped up to the 64th percentile. Now, the average exit velocity, barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, he's not hitting the ball nearly as hard as you would think a guy putting up these offensive numbers are doing. But what he's doing is he's making pitchers give him pitches that he can handle. He knows the pitches that he can handle. He knows how to foul off pitches that he can't handle. And he is working these long at-bats, which is what you want from your leadoff guy. The everyday consistency, which is why I don't think the Rangers are going to move him off the leadoff position until someone forces them to, or until he loses it. And I don't think that he is going to lose that leadoff position this year or maybe even next year. I think Evan Carter or Wyatt Langford could be an exceptional leadoff batter. But as long as you've got Marcus Semien, that steady veteran who's going to play 162 games every year until you force him to sit one, that is a extremely valuable player to have at the top of your lineup. And the way he's aging, he has been more durable than Adrian Beltre has in his final seasons. This 7.3 WAR season is, it was 7.4 WAR season, was higher than any WAR season that Adrian Beltre had as a member of the Texas Rangers. Let that sink in for a second. Last year's total Baseball Reference WAR for Marcus Semien was better than any year Adrian Beltre had with the Rangers. That's nuts. That's absolutely bonkers, the level of production that he is putting up at that level. And that number 3 MVP finish, that's as high as Adrian Beltre finished in 2012, which was his best season with the Rangers, an all-star season, and a 7.2 Baseball Reference WAR season. Marcus Semien is doing Adrian Beltre things, and I think we need to appreciate him for it because he is one of the underrated superstars of this game. And if Rangers fans don't appreciate him, then how are other teams going to know how good this superstar at second base is for your Texas Rangers? Now that's going to do it for today's show. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.